JB here. Hope everybody's doing outstanding. March 25th, 2024. Going to talk a little bit about the markets, talk about CGC. I just added some DWAC calls. Thoughts and prayers for me on that one. Cardlytics, I'll talk about the GLP-1 names like I have for a while. Hopefully we're getting some data this week, end of the first quarter. That's when the oral data is due out for VKTX. Talk a little bit about PayPal and the markets and go from there. But first, I'll talk about CGC. So got in those calls on Friday. Again, I was watching it all the past week, and some of the cannabis names like Tilray I've been watching for quite some time. IIPR, the REIT for in the cannabis space, names that I think at some point are gonna really start to take off. IIPR is a great example, which I wish I grabbed some calls last week, and I think it was at 103. Now it's at 105. I'll continue to look for opportunities in that space, and I think CGC is like the cleanest of the plays in regards, besides IIPR, because Tilray has that overhang. You have the big short, that big short piece on the name, and there's questions around the leadership team and things like that. And not only that, they have hands in the IPA beverage side too. So maybe there's too many moving parts there. So I'd rather just stick with some of the easier plays. I would call them the easier, cleaner plays. So luckily I was able to lock some of my $8 strikes, got the $10 calls as well, locked those in to cover costs, and then it was up. I think it was over 940 or so in the pre-market, all the way down into the eights, and then it opened pretty much flat. Struggled around, and then it's just been profit taking pretty much all day, down 16%. Have to figure. I mean, it was up 168% or so last week, so it's down 16%. I mean, you have to think at some point people take a little bit of profits after the huge move. I think it was 6 days in a row to the upside. I think it opened last week in the threes. So, not saying, of course I wish it just kept ramping higher, but sometimes you got to shake some folks out before the next leg to the upside. Area I'd be watching, and I have the 50-day moving average at 546. So if it broke that, not that my $10 calls would have much value anyway, I'd probably pull the ripcord and then revisit at some point. On the flip side, if it shows some strength later today or tomorrow, I might look to add some further out strikes, because I think if the mojo continues, I think it heads into the teens, 14, 15, if not higher. So I'll continue to look for opportunities to play CGC for upside. Cardlytics, what else do I have to say about Cardlytics? Just a monster since its earnings. That announcement on March 14th around signing on Amex for a 3-year partnership deal, I think that's still flying under the radar. And then you have the insider, Clifford Sozin. He's been a big stakeholder of Cardlytics for the last at least 5 years, has a huge, I think it's 16% stake now. Just added two blocks, a 9 million transaction and a 5 million transaction at $13 and $14. I would not be surprised if he's adding more shares here. He has a very concentrated portfolio, only 5 stocks in his fund. Carvana is one of them, and Carvana accounts for about 44% of his holdings. And Cardlytics is only 6%. He's very bullish on Cardlytics, so you would think he's using this, especially with the recent earnings and the recent deal with Amex. He's using this right now as a great opportunity, he thinks, probably to add. He thinks it's going much higher. So I would not be surprised if there's more Form 4s coming out. I don't even think that's as big a deal, but I think the big deal was the Amex signing, because, like I've said for quite some time since I've followed Cardlytics, they have line of sight to over 50% of all card swipes in the U.S. I don't know how much Amex brings that number up. Is it 65%? I don't know if Amex has line of sight to 10% of transactions in the U.S. I don't know what that looks like. But all it does is it increases their Cardlytics' line of sight and their valuation, because the more eyes they have on the transactions in the U.S., the more data. And that's the other side of their business model. It's not just the advertising being the middleman between the banks and the card companies, and then the vendors, the restaurants, the travel companies, the airlines, things like that. It's also the data side. So the more data they have, the more valuable the company becomes. I was looking at the May 30s now, so I may look at some May 30s. The 2250s are almost a double now, or are they a double? So I'm not going to sit here and try and add too much yet. I probably would want to get out the rest of my 20s. They're 60 by 65 now. So, so Cardlytics has been nice. Let's see. Yeah, I'll wait till they get to 70, and then I would lock some freebies, and maybe I'll get some May 30s. But just a great story. It's funny, and I used to be on StockTwits a lot more than I used to, back in the day, and then you go and peek at some of the folks posting. It's like they're clueless to what the company does. They just see it that it's up so much in such a short period of time. They think it's a huge short. Meanwhile, this is pretty much the abrupt turnaround. Cardlytics had some issues, margins, revenues, growth, all those things, and then this quarter just kind of erased all those doubts, and now it's going to turn around into a growth story again. And if that's the case, I mean, it was over, I forget what it went up to, 100. Let's see, was it 100 and something dollars? I can go back and pull up $170 stock back in 2021. I'm not saying it gets there, but certainly an opportunity to get into the 20s, maybe 30, maybe even higher. So if you see me talk about Cardlytics, that's kind of my thought process and rationale why I keep adding calls despite the stock being up so much. And similar to CGC, at some point it's going to have some kind of pullback. But, I mean, it's green 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days in a row after its little pullback last Monday. So I'll continue to look for opportunities to trade that one for upside. So now VKTX, so Viking Therapeutics, at some point, and you would hope it's this week, they better not drop the ball, but they're going to announce their oral data, phase 1. If data beats expectations, I don't even know what the baseline is or what would construe positive data, but if it is positive, the stock will trade into the low, maybe 120, 130. And then on the flip side, I think even if the data is not that good, I don't think the stock has much room to fall to the downside. My question or my concern would be that they announce the data Friday morning. Markets close Friday. So hopefully that's not the case. I don't want to have to sit around all weekend waiting for where the stock opens on Monday. But I'm hoping maybe tomorrow morning would be a nice time to release the data. And then especially before the long holiday weekend. Then finally, maybe next Monday, we get M&A in the GLP-1 space, which, take a look at some of the names today. GPCR is back on the green side, back over 44, so that's a good sign. I still think it's going to come up and test 50 in the coming, I'm hoping the coming days, but it might be another week or two. And once it breaks that 50, I think it's off to the races, and it's back. It held the 50-day moving average, so that's a good sign. The 50 days at 41.95, came pretty close to testing that on in the morning. SGCPR, and then TERNs slightly in the green here, was up over 2%. It's kind of giving back a little bit of the gains, but a good sign that it's holding its 50-day moving average. It's 656 is the 50-day. It's at 67, 669 here. It holds that. It's got a golden cross on the chart. It also has a possible bullish crossover on the momentum indicators. That's typically a good sign. Let's see, I could probably paste that in the chat room if you want to see that. So really like turns here for upside. I still have 750s, I have freebie 10s, but those going to need some work. So those are the GLP-1 names. It seems like every weekend there's new articles. People, I think there was a class action lawsuit against NVO and LLY in regards to their drugs and the nausea. Some people lost their gallbladders or intestine. I read some of the articles, but it's like any drug. They have warnings. Here are the side effects of taking the drug. So if you're taking the drug and people were taking for diabetes and then they had these adverse reactions, you get off the drug, right? Instead, they keep taking, they go to hospital and have serious ramifications for that. And then they want to blame the drug company. I would be a different story if you took the pill once and then you were in hospital and you lost some kind of important organ in your body. But to me, anyway, I feel bad for folks. You never want to see anybody get hurt or whatever, but you hate to see people also try and take advantage of this. So anyway, so the bigger these companies get, the more of those articles you're going to see, similar to what you saw with Tesla, right? I mean, nowadays it's not. It used to be an uncommon place. You drive by a Tesla, you say, "Wow, there's a Tesla car." 5 years ago, whatever it is. Now it's much more commonplace. But now it's, oh my gosh, a Tesla got in a car accident, and it makes headlines everywhere, right? Meanwhile, what percent of accidents actually involve a Tesla? It's just comical. Anyway, all right. So rants for other days. So that's in the GLP-1 space. Hopefully there's some M&A coming in the next couple of days or next Monday would be phenomenal. PayPal starting to head back in the right direction after its pullback on Friday. I mean, it was up a couple of days in a row, gave back some of the gains from last Wednesday and Thursday. Hit that 65 handle, it closed at, and it's been looking pretty strong here. So consolidation, and then hopefully 70 by the end of the week would be great. I've talked about before. PayPal's kind of transitioned from being this huge hyper growth company to more of a valuation company. I think it's taken some time for the market to price that in or to figure it out. And I think now we're at that stage where it's churned through buyers and sellers, and now I think it's ready to. There's more value to the upside than the downside. So I think, or at least it's undervalued at this stage, in my opinion. So I think it heads much higher in the coming weeks. Not that I'm going to add any more calls here, but nice to see it heading in the right direction. Clear secure. So, unfortunately, I was looking on Friday, it was gapping up already into the 20s, and Clear, which was one of the names I've traded quite a bit over the last year or so because I think it's a great growth story. Here's a company, growing top line 30%, or actually more than that. Fundamentally sound, huge cash hoard, paying out dividends, doing buybacks, and they just announced another $100 million buyback. They increased their buyback program by another $100 million. And just a great story. But sure enough, it's up another 4.5% here. It's had a history of doing these gaps and runs, and then in the afternoon, all it does is fade and pretty much reverse the entire gain. So it becomes very frustrating to trade. So it's almost not worth the time and effort to try and trade it only to see profits evaporate. So definitely on the radar. But ironically enough, it has a partnership with Amex as well. One of their partner deals was Clear Secure was part of their free program. So if you were a member, you get Clear Secure, or maybe it was at a discounted price. Needless to say, that's some of the reason, not some of the reason, but you was able to grow their member base leaps and bounds. Some of it was because of that partnership with Amex, and then sure enough, you can draw some parallels here with Cardlytics. I think that's certainly still not appreciated in Cardlytics stock price. So that's you. Talk about the markets. Markets closed on Friday, and sure enough, what happens? PCE data. So the preferred inflation gauge for the Fed is coming out on Friday morning. Markets closed Friday. Powell's also doing a speech, and then there's a lot of Fed speakers this week. I don't know if that means too much. It's just earnings season's winding down. It's the end of the quarter, so it leaves some opportunity here for, I guess, folks to take advantage. But we'll have to see how everything plays out here. The SPY, I put on the watch list that the Bollinger Band. I'm a big fan of Bollinger Bands. It was right at the 420, like right where we are right now. It was 520 and change, but now it's 523.18. So that's a good sign. It keeps heading higher. Maybe some consolidation today. If we close in red, that'll be 2 days in a row. But maybe a little consolidation. We can bounce into the end of the week. 500 is the 50-day moving average, so it's creeping there. I'm trying to think of some of the other things I was looking at. DWAC. So this will be the last thing I talk about. I don't want to sit here and stare at DWAC. I've been staring at it the last couple months, in and out of calls. Cardlytics over 19, as a proxy for Trump, right? And I'm not political. I'm just a trader. So when I see an opportunity, and I think people are going to use it, the DWAC, and especially if once they change the ticker to DJT, they're going to use that as a vote for him, right? And especially, if you're a supporter or what have you, that now that he's going to be able to use that as possible capital for his campaign and stuff, it's almost like it's going to be like a donation proxy, right? It's not even going to be the company's just pure speculation, right? It's 100% speculation. I put that on the private feed, and I posted in here because it's not like you're trading PE ratios or growth, profits, revenues, EPS, any of that stuff. It's a pure proxy because the Truth Social platform is not making any substantial financial progress whatsoever. But maybe they are, I don't know. So the good thing is, and I was going back to look at some calls, and I was going to get the 90s, but I didn't want to spend 3 and change. I think even if it, if it goes to $70, the 90s and the 100s are going to go up nicely anyway. So I took the 100 strikes. The 100 strikes last Wednesday, before the big vote last Friday, they went up to $5. So if you bought them Wednesday into the vote on Friday, you'd be down quite a bit. So that's kind of my rationale in adding the calls today. So they got the vote out of the way, and now this is going to be, in my opinion, it's going to be a proxy for his campaign. right? And people are going to bid it up, especially if they're able to, there's talks, they're going to try and remove the lockup period, things like that. So if that happens, you would think dilution would be bad for the stock, but I think it's going to be the other way around. It's going to get gobbled up. So we'll see what happens. I'm not going to sit here and say this is the next social media titan company. It's not going to be Meta or, X, whatever you want to call it. But there's definitely, in my opinion, there's going to be some kind of FOMO situation going on, similar to what happened. Meme. It's going to be like a meme stock for a while. So the other thing is, what you look at. I was looking at the premiums today, and they seem somewhat sticky. So even when it drops a couple bucks, it's not like the premiums just get destroyed. They're kind of holding strong. So I think that's a good sign as well. There's also a tremendous amount of option volumes, 136,000 calls and puts traded today. So, which is quite a bit, especially, $46 stock. I don't know what the math is on that, but there's a 40 something million. I'd have to go look. I'd have to do the math. I'm trying to do it in my head. My head's not working right now. I think that's it, folks. I've been looking at Spotify too. I've had that on the watch list the last couple days. It's been on a nice tear in 2024, but I think it heads near 300 in the coming weeks, especially before the earnings report. So continue to look for possible spec calls on that one. And then the last but not least, and I don't want to do the Debbie Downer side of the rant here, but at some point there's going to be some greed reset in the chip AI space. It's just going to happen at some point. Over the weekend you had reports that China was going to they're going to ban Intel and is it Intel and AMD, Intel and whatever chips in their government computers. But the headline made it sound like it was going to be in China, 100% of China, right? So it's funny how they change the word headlines sometimes until you start to read and you say, oh, it's only in government computers. And then Monday morning, Qualcomm, Google, and is it Intel as well? They're trying to work on a way to cut into NVIDIA's market share and start to, pull in on what they're doing. But on the software side, I don't know. So there's always going to be these headlines that are going to try and, incite some kind of sell-off or competitive concerns. And it seems like they're becoming more prevalent. I don't think a headline's really going to be the thing that causes a greed reset. It's just one day there's going to be either a reversal, the market will be up quite a bit, and then we're just going to reverse, and then all of a sudden the chip stocks will sell off, or maybe we're going to have a gap down one morning. I don't know what it is, but at some point there's going to be a payoff on puts that are going to be 2,000, 3,000% if you're able to time perfect or somewhat perfect. So I'm not going to sit here and continue to kick the dirt on trying to get hedge puts on some of these names, but I'm certainly looking. And if I see signs, and I'm looking at the small caps because I think sometimes the small caps can be an indicator for the market, and they're actually doing well today and leading. But if those start to break down, maybe that's a sign. So that's about it. I think that's my rant for today. Thanks for listening, folks. Let's have a great day and a great week. And again, don't forget, markets close Friday. Rock and roll.